You picture yourself in a rocking chair, watching the Blue Ridge sunset, or digging your toes into Atlantic sand, thinking you found an affordable paradise. But reality hits fast. A 30-year mortgage in a town with rising crime and stagnant economic growth can turn that dream into regret. We're looking at 10 Carolina cities where buyer's remorse is common. For sale signs pop up quickly as people realize low property taxes don't make up for feeling unsafe at night. Stick around. We'll reveal a popular beach town with shocking theft stats, and the city that tops the list is consistently one of the most dangerous in the U.S. Before we start, subscribe, drop a comment if you've lived in these states, and share this with anyone thinking of moving south. Let's see where the dream starts to fall apart. Number 10 brings us to Asheville. At first glance, you might imagine it as the perfect mountain escape. A quirky, artsy haven packed with craft breweries, eclectic galleries, and street corners where banjo music fills the air. It's often held up as the face of tourism in North Carolina, the kind of place that looks effortlessly cool in every travel guide. But for those who actually call it home, that charming image quickly gives way to a much tougher reality, one that often feels like an ongoing financial strain. The main reason people are leaving comes down to a simple but serious problem. The cost of living has skyrocketed, while local wages haven't kept up. Housing, in particular, has been driven up by out-of-state buyers and the explosion of short-term rentals, pushing the median home price past $490,000 based on recent data from Redfin. Sure, that might seem reasonable if you're relocating from somewhere like California, but when local service jobs are still paying relatively low wages, it creates a huge gap that's hard to ignore. And it's not just about affording a home. The city itself is struggling to keep up with its own growth. Infrastructure hasn't expanded fast enough, and issues like homelessness have increased noticeably, with recent counts showing a clear rise in people living without shelter. As a result, parts of downtown that once felt relaxed and carefree now carry a different kind of energy, one that residents say feels more tense and uncertain. Concerns about property crime are also becoming more common, and the data supports those worries. According to Neighborhood Scout, the odds of becoming a victim of property crime here are about 1 in 7, which is surprisingly high for a city known for its peaceful, retreat-like vibe. Imagine spending close to $500,000 on a cozy bungalow, expecting tranquility, only to find yourself stuck in constant traffic on narrow mountain roads that were never built for this many people. Getting around can be frustrating, since the city's layout and mountainous terrain make it difficult to expand or improve the roadways. On top of that, everyday expenses like groceries and utilities tend to run higher than the national average, adding even more pressure to your budget. While it's undeniably a beautiful spot for a quick getaway, living here long-term often means facing the downsides of rapid gentrification, something that many feel has chipped away at the city's original character. Over time, it starts to feel like you're paying premium prices for a place whose infrastructure is buckling under the demands of tourism. And for many homeowners, that's the moment they decide it's time to put up a for sale sign and move on. Number 9 takes us to Columbia, the state's capital city. It's widely known for its intense heat, so heavy and humid that for nearly half the year, stepping outside can feel like walking straight into a bowl of steaming soup. Of course, you can't do much about the weather, but surprisingly, the humidity isn't even the main reason people are choosing to leave. On the surface, Columbia promotes itself as a lively college town and a central hub for government activity, full of energy and opportunity. But once you look a little closer, you'll find a city dealing with some pretty serious concerns, especially when it comes to safety. Data from the Federal Bureau of Investigation shows that Columbia regularly ranks GBVH in violent crime when compared to cities of similar size. We're talking about numbers that sit well above the national average, which can be a harsh reality to face after locking yourself into a long-term mortgage. The economic situation doesn't help much either, and for many residents, it's a major point of frustration. While the presence of University of South Carolina does bring jobs and activity, a significant portion of the population is still struggling financially. According to the United States Census Bureau, the poverty rate hovers around 24%, meaning nearly 1 in 4 people are living below the poverty line. That kind of imbalance creates a noticeable divide. You can pass through a beautiful, well-kept historic neighborhood, then just a couple of streets later find areas dealing with visible neglect and urban decay. This uneven economic landscape makes property values unpredictable, turning what should be a solid investment into something that feels more like a gamble. Then there's the infrastructure, which locals often criticize for being in rough shape. Road conditions, in particular, are a frequent complaint, with potholes and wear and tear that can seriously damage your car over time. And while South Carolina is known for relatively low property taxes, other costs can quietly add up. In places like Richland County, sales taxes and local fees can chip away at your budget more than you might expect. For families, the quality of schools is another sticking point that's hard to ignore. Ratings for many inner-city schools tend to fall short, often pushing parents toward private education or forcing them to relocate to suburban areas altogether. At that point, it raises the question of why you bought in the city to begin with. When you put it all together, the relentless heat, inconsistent economic growth, and safety concerns, it becomes clearer why so many people decide to move on. In fact, data from Neighborhood Scout suggests your chances of becoming a victim of violent crime here are about 1 in 106, which is enough to make many homeowners reconsider their decision and leave the capital behind. Number 8 is Greensboro, a city that's often marketed as the budget-friendly alternative to bigger hubs like Charlotte or Raleigh, somewhere you can stretch your money further right in the heart of the state. At first glance, that pitch holds up, especially with median home prices sitting around $300,000, which looks appealing compared to nearby cities. But there's a downside that doesn't always get mentioned up front. For years now, Greensboro has been stuck in something of an identity shift, moving away from its roots as a manufacturing center and trying to reinvent itself as a logistics-driven economy. That kind of transition hasn't been smooth, and the effects are still visible across the city. Economic progress hasn't reached every neighborhood evenly, leaving some areas behind while others move forward. In certain parts of town, poverty rates climb above 20%, creating cycles where growth stalls, home values struggle, and new businesses hesitate to invest. However, what really makes potential buyers think twice is the crime situation. This isn't just about perception or rumors. The data paints a clear picture. Reports from the Greensboro Police Department show ongoing issues with crimes like aggravated assault and burglary that haven't gone away. When you compare Greensboro to cities with similar population sizes, its crime rate stands noticeably higher than the national average. So you might move into what seems like an affordable home, only to discover your car insurance premiums jump significantly because the area is considered high risk for auto theft. That's one of those hidden expenses that rarely comes up during a showing or open house. Another factor to consider is how spread out the city is. Greensboro isn't very compact, so getting around usually means driving everywhere you need to go. Public transportation options are limited, which leaves most residents heavily dependent on their cars. On top of that, traffic is gradually getting worse as the city takes on more of a role as a commuter hub for the surrounding Triad region. The job market can also feel a bit slow, especially when compared to the booming tech scene in places like Raleigh. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, wage growth in the Greensboro High Point area has often trailed behind nearby regions like the Triangle. So while you might be drawn in by lower home prices, it can become frustrating if your income doesn't keep pace with rising living costs. Over time, that affordable home can start to feel more like a financial strain than a smart investment. In many ways, Greensboro has the vibe of a place that's always on the verge of something bigger, but never quite gets there. And for a lot of buyers, that waiting game eventually wears thin after a few years without the turnaround they were hoping for. Number 7 is Spartanburg. Locals like to call it Sparkle City, but for a lot of newcomers, that shine wears off pretty quickly once they've settled in and the boxes are unpacked. The city has been working hard to reinvent itself, especially by drawing in manufacturing opportunities like the nearby BMW operations. Even so, the core of the city still faces long-standing issues that push many residents to relocate, either depey the suburbs or out of state altogether. The biggest reason behind buyers' regret here is, unsurprisingly, crime. And it's not just slightly elevated, it's significant. Data from Neighborhood Scout shows that Spartanburg is safer than only about 4% of cities across the United States. Take a moment to process that, meaning roughly 96% of cities nationwide are considered safer than this one. The rate of violent crime in particular ranks among the highest in South Carolina. Statistically, you're looking at about a 1 in 85 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime, which is not exactly reassuring, especially for families. That kind of environment naturally makes people uneasy, whether it's walking through downtown after dark or letting kids play outside without constant supervision. Beyond safety concerns, the local school systems within city limits often face challenges tied to funding and overall performance. Because of that, many families opt for county schools instead, which weakens demand in the city's housing market. From an economic standpoint, while there are jobs available in the broader region, the city center itself struggles with a poverty rate of around 23%, according to the United States Census Bureau. You can actually see this disparity. Empty storefronts and aging, run-down homes sitting just blocks away from newer redevelopment projects. That contrast can feel stark and unsettling. You might invest in a beautifully restored historic property, but if the house across the street is abandoned and attracting illegal activity, it limits how much your own home can gain in value. Air quality has also been a concern in the area due to its industrial past. While conditions have improved over time, it's still something that residents, especially those with sensitivities, continue to mention. When you start to feel like you always have to stay alert and watch your surroundings, the charm of Southern living can only go so far. And for many people, that's when they decide it's time to move on. Number 6 is Gastonia. If you've spent any time online looking into North Carolina, chances are you've come across a few jokes at Gastonia's expense. Around the Charlotte area, it's often treated like the punchline, but for the people who actually live there, the challenges aren't funny at all. Sitting just west of Charlotte, Gastonia is usually promoted as a commuter-friendly option where you can afford a much larger home without paying big city prices. At first glance, that sounds like a smart trade-off, but that lower price tends to come with some serious compromises. The city has long struggled with a rough-around-the-edges reputation, and unfortunately, the data doesn't do much to challenge that image. One of the biggest concerns is the high rate of property crime. According to statistics from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, incidents like burglary, larceny, and vehicle theft occur here at levels well above the North Carolina average. That means everyday worries, like break-ins or stolen packages, become part of normal life for many residents. You might move into a brand new home in a quiet-looking neighborhood, only to join the local community group and immediately see constant posts about car break-ins and missing deliveries. Over time, that kind of environment creates a sense of unease that makes it hard to truly relax and enjoy your home. Beyond safety issues, the overall layout of Gastonia doesn't do it many favors either. It's a classic case of suburban sprawl, filled with strip malls, chain restaurants, and long stretches of concrete, without much of a unique identity to set it apart. You could easily find yourself stuck in traffic along Franklin Boulevard, surrounded by endless development, wondering if the move was really worth it. From an economic standpoint, things aren't especially strong either. While there has been some growth, the median household income still falls below the state average, and the poverty rate sits at roughly 15%. That combination affects everything from local amenities to how much funding is available for improving infrastructure and public services. Gastonia also tends to absorb some of the spillover challenges from nearby Charlotte, but without having the same level of resources to deal with them effectively. As a result, many residents feel like they're simply living on the outskirts, close enough to commute, but without enjoying the benefits of city life. In the end, it often becomes a temporary stop. People buy an affordable starter home, build up some equity, and then leave once they realize the lifestyle trade-offs don't quite balance out the savings. Number 5 is Myrtle Beach, and this one tends to catch people off guard. Most folks think of it as the perfect vacation hotspot, but actually living there year-round is a very different experience. The Grand Strand is undeniably great for a summer getaway, especially for a week or two in July. But when you try to turn that vacation vibe into everyday life, the reality can feel a lot less appealing. One major issue is that the local economy revolves almost entirely around tourism, which heavily limits the types of jobs available. Most opportunities fall into the service sector, meaning lower wages and fewer long-term career options. If you're not working in restaurants or the hospitality industry, finding a well-paying, stable job can be a real challenge. That kind of job market leads to a constantly shifting population where neighbors frequently move in and out, making it difficult to build lasting connections. Still, the biggest factor driving people away from Myrtle Beach is crime. It regularly ranks among the more dangerous cities in the state, and the large number of visitors only adds to the problem. With so many tourists passing through, opportunistic crimes become much more common. Recent statistics show that the overall crime rate exceeds 100 incidents per 1,000 residents, which is extremely high by any standard. That includes everything from minor theft to more serious violent incidents, many of which tend to increase during peak travel seasons. On top of that, the massive seasonal crowds can make everyday tasks frustrating. During the summer, traffic becomes overwhelming, and getting somewhere simple, like the grocery store, can take far longer than expected, especially along busy routes like Highway 17. There's also something many buyers don't think about upfront: the effects of the coastal environment. Salt air can be surprisingly harsh, wearing down homes, vehicles, and HVAC systems much faster than in inland areas. Insurance costs are another major factor, largely due to the constant risk of hurricanes. What might seem like a great deal on a beachfront condo can quickly become expensive once you factor in HOA dues, plus wind, hail, and flood insurance premiums. Before long, your monthly expenses can climb much higher than you anticipated. And then there's the reputation, sometimes referred to as Dirty Myrtle, which didn't come out of nowhere. After the initial excitement of living near the ocean fades, many residents find themselves dealing with a place that feels crowded, overly commercialized, and not as safe as they expected. For a lot of retirees in particular, that realization leads to a decision to move inland after just a few years. Number 4 is Fayetteville. You might recognize it as the home of Fort Liberty, a place with deep military roots and a strong sense of history. But while that legacy is a big draw, many civilians who move into the housing market here end up feeling a very different reality. You might arrive expecting a close-knit, patriotic community, but instead, it can feel more like a revolving door, where neighbors move in and out so frequently that you barely get a chance to know anyone. That constant turnover makes it difficult to build any real sense of stability or connection. One of the biggest reasons people end up leaving is tied to a nickname the city just can't seem to shake. Fayetteville is a label many locals dislike, yet ongoing crime issues continue to reinforce it. In many parts of the city, safety can feel more like a luxury than a given. According to data from Neighborhood Scout, the odds of becoming a victim of violent crime here are about 1 in 115. That's the kind of number that makes you double-check your locks every night before going to bed. And when it comes to property crime, the situation can feel even more concerning. There's roughly a 1 in 30 chance of dealing with things like car break-ins or home burglaries. You might buy what seems like a solid starter home near the base, only to find yourself repeatedly dealing with smashed windows or stolen belongings. Before long, weekends can start to feel less like downtime and more like filing reports and handling insurance claims. While local law enforcement is actively working to address these issues, the sheer volume of incidents makes it an uphill battle. From an economic perspective, the city can feel somewhat stuck. Although the military provides a level of stability for some residents, the broader population faces challenges, including a poverty rate of around 18%, according to the United States Census Bureau. That economic divide is visible in many commercial areas, where you're more likely to see pawn shops, payday lenders, and fast food chains than the kind of higher-end amenities many buyers expect. Education is another area that often raises concerns for families. School ratings across the district tend to fall below average, which leads some parents to consider private schooling, an added expense they may not have planned for. Over time, it can start to feel like you're investing in a place that lacks long-term stability, both socially and economically. For many people, that realization turns Fayetteville into more of a temporary stop than a place to truly settle down. Number 3 is Rocky Mount. If you've been searching for a deal, this place might have caught your eye, with historic Victorian homes listed at prices that almost seem too good to be true. At first, it can feel like you've stumbled onto an incredible bargain. But there's a reason those prices are so low, and it's not exactly reassuring. Rocky Mount has become a clear example of the struggles many post-industrial southern cities face, and for a lot of buyers, regret sets in almost immediately after moving in. This is a community that took a major hit when industries like textiles and tobacco declined, and unfortunately, the recovery hasn't really materialized. The economic impact is still very visible today. According to the United States Census Bureau, the poverty rate sits at around 25%, which is an incredibly high figure. That means roughly 1 out of every 4 Marduk you see day to day is living below the poverty line, creating an atmosphere that can feel heavy and strained. There's a sense of hardship that runs through much of the city. But even with those economic challenges, the biggest concern for most residents isn't jobs, it's safety. Rocky Mount has built a reputation that even locals find hard to ignore. Data from the Federal Bureau of Investigation shows that the violent crime rate here is more than twice the national average. That's a serious level of risk, especially for a city of this size. In some cases, people report hearing gunshots at night and realizing it's not fireworks, which can be a harsh and unsettling reality for anyone expecting a quiet, small-town environment. Things don't necessarily improve when it comes time to sell, either. The local housing market tends to move slowly, largely because the city's reputation is well known across the region. Home values haven't seen much growth, and in certain neighborhoods they're actually declining. Data from Zillow suggests the market here is much cooler compared to other parts of the state. There's also a noticeable divide between more stable areas and those that are struggling. But crime doesn't always stay contained to one side. Over time, it becomes clear that cosmetic upgrades and renovations can only do so much. No matter how much you improve the house itself, it doesn't change the broader environment or the limited job opportunities nearby. In the end, you might have paid very little for your home, but the trade-off often comes at the expense of your overall sense of security and peace of mind. Number 2 is North Charleston. Don't be fooled by the name. It's not just the northern extension of the picturesque, historic Charleston Peninsula. This city is a whole different reality, and one that can catch newcomers off guard. North Charleston is certainly an industrial hub, but it also carries a reputation as one of the most dangerous cities in South Carolina. Many buyers are drawn in by the relatively lower housing costs, thinking they've found a way to live near the coast without breaking the bank. But day-to-day life here can be a grind that quickly wears you down. Crime is a major factor. Data from Neighborhood Scout shows that North Charleston is safer than only 2% of cities nationwide. Put another way, 98% of U.S. cities are considered safer than the place where you just signed a 30-year mortgage. Your odds of experiencing either a violent or property crime here are roughly 1 in 18, a risk that most families would prefer to avoid. Police presence is constant, but so are the blue lights you see flashing down the streets. Beyond crime, the heavy industry in the area takes a toll on quality of life. Living here means being next to major shipping routes, train tracks, and manufacturing plants, which bring constant noise and often affect air quality, especially for residents with respiratory sensitivities. Traffic is another headache. North Charleston serves as a bottleneck for anyone trying to reach Charleston proper, so congestion on roads like Interstate 26 is almost guaranteed, making even short commutes feel endless. Economic challenges add another layer of difficulty. The city's poverty rate sits around 18%, which contributes to noticeable blight in certain neighborhoods. Even if your own home is renovated and attractive, having a boarded-up or crime-prone property next door can put your investment at risk. In many ways, this is a classic bait-and-switch scenario. Proximity to the beach is used to lure buyers into a high-stress, high-crime industrial zone. For most people, the novelty fades within a few years, and the stress outweighs any savings from the cheaper housing. Number 1 is Lumberton. We've officially reached the lowest rung on the ladder, and if you happen to own property here, my sympathies are with you. Statistically, Lumberton ranks among the worst places to live in the Carolinas, and the sense of buyer's remorse sets in almost immediately. What puts it at the top of the list is a brutal combination of high crime and environmental risk. Let's start with the crime, because it's truly alarming. According to Federal Bureau of Investigation data, the violent crime rate in Lumberton far exceeds the national average, frequently landing it at or near the top of North Carolina's most dangerous cities. Locals may joke about Lumtown being a war zone, but when you're living there, the humor quickly wears off. Data from Neighborhood Scout shows a 1 in 20 chance of falling victim to property crime and a 1 in 50 chance of violent crime. In other words, safety is not something you can take for granted here. It's practically non-existent. But the troubles don't end with crime. Economically, the city is in a deep depression. The United States Census Bureau reports a poverty rate of nearly 30%, meaning almost a third of residents struggle just to make ends meet. With such a limited tax base, funding for schools, roads, and infrastructure is severely constrained. Then there's the flooding risk. Lumberton sits in a low-lying area that has been hit hard by hurricanes like Matthew and Florence. Entire neighborhoods have been submerged, and recovery has been painfully slow. If you buy here, expect flood insurance premiums that can rival your mortgage payment, assuming you can even secure coverage. The housing stock itself is deteriorating, since homeowners are understandably hesitant to invest in properties that could be underwater during the next storm. Essentially, you're stuck in a city with limited employment opportunities, dangerous streets, and a river that seems eager to claim your home. It's the ultimate real estate trap, and that's why Lumberton earns the crown for buyer's remorse in the Carolinas. From the mountains of Asheville to the flood-prone swamps of Lumberton, these locations serve as cautionary tales. High crime, economic hardship, and the sinking realization that your dream purchase may have been a very costly mistake. Thanks for riding along on this tour. If you found this useful, hit the like button, subscribe for more honest city breakdowns, and share it with a friend who's scrolling through Zillow right now. Drive safe, and I'll see you on the next adventure.